Morning all, thought I'd do a quick post-mortem analysis of that King's Gambit line, which I got in big trouble in the recent game just now. So he took knight 3 g5, h4 was played. After g4, on chess games actually, there's two choices, knight e5 or knight g5. Now I'm not really sure about this knight e5, and I felt there was some sort of risk if the implication is just to try and get this pawn back. If you do get that pawn, then these pawns are fragmented. But what about this g-file? That game showed there's some downsides of going for that pawn. But nevertheless, in the game continuation, knight takes g4. Clearly, knight e7 would be embarrassing. Knight f6 mate. So, bishop g7 might allow simply d4. Or even h5 might be a possibility. Let's have a quick look at that. Actually, engine just likes knight c3, and if knight f6, just taking. In fact, that's very similar to what I should have really played it instead. After knight takes g4, knight f6 here. This was an inferior move apparently, knight f2. It looks a bit passive. So just taking on f6 puts the queen vulnerable for knight c3 to d5 to be a threat, tempo gaining threat. So knight c3, now say c6, I think white's okay. Queen f3, there's time to gang up on that. In fact, knight e2 here, or just d3. d3 maybe. Queen f2. White should be okay in this position, even small advantage. So basically, after knight c3, let's go into what I should have played. Knight takes, queen takes, knight c3. Knight c6, knight d5, queen g6, d3. Now this is interesting, inviting a check, and this is all on chessgames.com. And playing c3 here, and actually when white's king goes to c2, it's given us slightly better for white here. So it's strange, but I suppose that there is structural damage on the pawns. Queen f3's on the cards, the king's not too bad on c2. So I'll just replay that line. So this would have been much better than the game. So with this knight e5 line, d6 taking on g4, taking on f6, playing knight c3, not d4. d4 I don't think, because really the idea I think is to gain that knight d5. Knight c6, and it's a target. You don't really want the d pawn as a target, or to play d5. That's a big advantage to black. So knight c3 is the move here to keep the white position alive. Knight c6. Okay, black's got control of d4. Doesn't matter. Knight d5, queen g6. And now it looks as though this is very scary. Not taking on c7, by the way, because I think that's asking for a complete massacre. But instead playing d3 here. If you take on c7, apparently king d8, huge advantage for black. Say taking, oh, it's a mate in 2 here. That's not particularly clever. So basically, in this position, no panic. After queen g6, just play d3. So inviting positively this check for king d2. And now the knight's also stopping e3, otherwise queen e3 might be dangerous. We could have a quick look at knight b4. So here apparently queen e1, that guards e3 as a square. But it does sacrifice the exchange. Or not. No, it gets back the exchange. No problem. Okay, small advantage to black. Was there anything better after knight b4? What's the problem with knight b4? Let's assume c3 again here. Can that be too bad? King c2, bishop g4. Tricky. Knight b4. It takes, I suppose, white gets mated again or something. No, not quite, maybe. King is making a run for it. Maybe white's okay here. Small advantage to black, apparently. So these lines are not as fun, really. If we go back, maybe, in fact, after h4, g4, maybe knight g5 is a good punt. Or even after d6 to play knight takes f7. And although the engines don't like this, this is more aggressive in the spirit of things. This position. This looks quite aggressive, just the sack on f7. d5 technically. Knight c6. Well, I don't know. It looks as though if white can try and castle queenside, there's a lot of fun to be had here. So it's more in the spirit of the King's Gambit. Say castling queenside here. Can't be that bad. Much better than the only other position with the king getting kicked around. So I think, actually, as a recommendation, personally, from the evidence here, in this line, maybe forget knight g4, just play knight takes f7. Try and expose the black king. Okay, for the knight, you get the opportunity to castle queenside. If black wants to go completely greedy, by the way, well, actually bishop h6 and queen g5. Here h6 prevents bishop h6. That was quite a major threat. That's okay. It looks like a position to have some fun with. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks so much. Here is an example Tarrasch game with the knight sack on, actually not playing knight g4, but knight takes f7. Okay, and just look at black's king being kicked around a bit. So this is more fun than the game I had with my king exposed. So even though white's a piece down, it's to do with having fun with the opponent's king, really. And there's a nice finish to this game coming up off the check. Now he could have forced a draw by repetition. I think the opponent could have claimed a repetition, but instead, after this, I think Tarrasch spots something absolutely brilliant here at move 29. So this is against Hirschler, Nuremberg, 1893. Absolutely brilliant conception here. I wonder if you can spot it if I give you 20 seconds starting from now. White's play, what would you play here? Okay, rook sack, putting the knight there, drag and drop for the knight. And now what would you play here? Another 20 seconds starting from now. Okay, pretty spectacular. Another rook sack, drag and dropping the king there, and now that they're there, you'd play 5 seconds. Of course, you play e7. That was the end of the game. So that just shows that that line's a lot more fun, just sacking on f7. Quick overview and summary. So when this happens, even if it looks as though you know, you could also just play knight g5 with the more unsubtle intention of playing knight takes f7, but knight e5 could be used to create some ambiguity from the opponent, to prompt d6, but actually not try and win this pawn, just go for bringing the king out. In any case, it's all good fun, worth a punt in rapid chess. The old masters knew what they're doing. Get the king, play with the king, not have your king played with, and the end result can be pretty brilliant, like this game demonstrates. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.